So after coming out of a very difficult battle where I was starved down, where they used food as a weapon in the state of Wisconsin, Dane County, Wisconsin, I went back to the Pentagon to ask them why were they not there to support me in the field, in the theater in Wisconsin. And when I walked in the door, the attitude towards me was nothing but honorable. They were like, 10 hut! Everybody jumped to attention. They're like, this gentleman rocks with 40-inch strides. He's a man of his word. I'm like, hey, you guys were supposed to be there under material readiness and logistical support. You were supposed to be there as I was running this operation to clean out the fictitious grammar in the state of Wisconsin. And they said, Mr. Gould, our hands were tied. They said, however, we can help you out here. What do you need? I says, well, I found a back door into the U.S. Supreme Court. And they're like, well, that's interesting. I said, yeah, I actually found a way through syntaxing the codes under the U.S. Supreme Court statutes on how on the procedures on how to order the U.S. Supreme Court open and hold trial. And they said, what can we do for you? And I said, well, I got a bond here from my IRS case, and I need to file it as a vessel, bonding my vessel to come into the foreign country, the District of Columbia. They said, very good. And I said, I'd like to go to the United States International Trade Commission for Commerce. And they said, be at this door at such and such a time. It was over at the International Trade Commission, and the door will open, and you can tell them what you want. So I went to the United States International Trade Commission, and they autographed the stamps on my bond. And at that point, I gave 3-day rescission that I was coming to the U.S. Supreme Court. When I got to the U.S. Supreme Court, because of the solitary condition of the state, no one had ever tried ordering the Supreme Court open, because they were only taking writs of certiorari for a performance to get an opinion of these 9 judges. And I went back to the back because of the 9/11 false flag. They could not accept any paperwork. You just can't carry, an average citizen just cannot carry paperwork into the clerk's office. You have to go through a gambit of security protocols. So I went to the back to go through the security protocols. When I got to the back, they had the Supreme Court Police Department taking the paperwork and file stamping it with the U.S. Supreme Court clerk's file stamps, file stamping your contracts in, and then you pay your filing fee there. But because I'm Postmaster General and Treasurer and Sovereign of the country, I was able to file my filing fee with a 1-ounce gold coin. And that had never been done in the history of the United States judicial system. They took a gold filing from me, which made it an equitable contract. And so they took the filing fee. I had served everybody under service of the methods and methods of the service. I took the green cards back after all the Vassalese defendants got their lawsuits. Took the green cards back to the clerk's office and file stamped my proof of the service in. When I did that, the clerk of courts wanted to meet me. So I went into the clerk's office. Supreme Court police moved me around to the clerk's office, and we had a discussion about what I was doing, the articulation of grammar in a now time or a now space scenario, and the using prepositional phrases to certify the facts. Now, a very fun thing happened. As I was walking into the U.S. Supreme Court, I was looking up on the walls of the U.S. Supreme Court, and all words in the U.S. Supreme Court are in italicized form. Well, in contract law, all italicized words are misspelled and not on the page. So every single statement and every single word on the U.S. Supreme Court is not actually there. It's an illusion, a fiction. So the whole building is plagiarized with nothingness. Though the average person walks in and reads the inscriptions on the wall, which are all on italicized words, which means that there's nothing, all italicized words are void on contract. So I explained that to the clerk. They said, very good. So I proceeded out, and I was met by more gentlemen in very nice suits who wanted to have a talk with me about what I was doing. And so I walked them through the protocols of a foreign vessel in dry dock, being the U.S. Supreme Court. What that means is a foreign vessel in dry dock is when you walk into the U.S. Supreme Court, outside the courtroom, court building itself as a vessel, because it's docked on the planet, sits a ball or an eagle, depending on what location you walk into the building. Each one has different symbolization or different meaning for the symbols on top of the flag standard.
The flags that you see all over the world, there's 11 different flags in the United States, military and civilian operations, including the new one. When President Obama on election day was elected, if you look at the pictures on all the newspapers across the United States, you saw this flag hanging behind Obama. It's a New World Order flag. It has a circle of stars, a blue square field, and it's 1 to 2.25. They also had another one with 50 stars, 1 to 2.25. That was the United States Treasury flag. The flag that's 3 by 4 with a blue square field is a military boat flag. All vessels in dry dock on planet Earth, like your own personal house, the school building, these are all vessels in dry dock. They should be flying a 3 by 4 boat flag. The flag over here with yellow fringe on it, this is a 1 to 1.9. I recognize this is old. This is a very old flag, by the way. When you take the flag and you fold it like this, corner to corner, and then you take it, you put it up here to the corner, it should only have one stripe showing, which does. So this is a 1 to 1.9 flag. By putting a fringe on it, you say that the contract for the United States of America, or better known as the Constitution, has been captured by the yellow fringe, which is the court flags, maritime law. It says your contract is null and void because they put a phoenix on top. So the wingtips pointed down is a Vatican banking phoenix. Wingtips up is a your postal eagle. I call it the postal chicken. The acorn, as you see, the acorn is for military parades. It's a military symbol, ACC meaning no contract. The spear is for military court-martials. And the ball is for military advertising and military recruiting. Henceforth, you have it in front of the post office with the ball on top. And inside the post office, you have the eagle on top because the post office is postal. Henceforth, you're in the postal building, but outside, it's where you sign up for the draft. Everyone turn 18, you got to sign up for the draft. You've got, 90 days after your 18th birthday, do so. The 3 by 5 flag is a military flag with a blue square field. It's used for parades. The reason that they have this flag, not the 1 to 1.9 flag, is because of the weight of the flag would hang down, whereas in a marching at 3 miles an hour, the wind would catch it and it would be aloft because of its weight. The 1 to 1.9 flag I now hold copyrights to as the correct sentence structure, communication, parse, syntax, grammar flag, recognized worldwide, both in black and white and in color, red, white, and blue. The 3 by 5 base flag has a 3 by 4 field, and this is for military bases. The ones they sell at Walmart are 3 by 5 with a blue square field. That is a military flag. And when the The sentence runs like this. When they come looking for your jurisdiction, what flag are you flying? If you've got a military base flag outside your door, don't be surprised if the military can go ahead and set up camp in yours, because you've given it military jurisdiction to start with.
So I was explaining to the gentleman in the suits what was going on there, because the courthouse is controlled through the Department of Transportation, through the Port Authority's office. This is why you've got to show your ID to transport yourself through the security gates, because everything there is about shipping. And they were very cognizant of that. In fact, they were very compliant with the fact that I comprehended what was going on. So once I got the service filed in, I then ran my timelines on that, and I filed in a SEE treaty with the nearest diocese to the church, to the Supreme Court. And when I went in to file my SEE treaty, which I had authorization to do as a keymaster at the Vatican for hieroglyphics to run all banks, military locations on planet Earth, the Supreme Court being a bank through the clerk of the court with her file stamp, enjoined her with the Universal Postal Union. So everything is about banking and moving cargo and vessels because of the shipping war that we're all in. And so I filed my SEE treaty, and when I walked into the Catholic Church, as soon as I was identified, the Catholic cardinal in his little clown's outfit, being his little hat and his little garb, he took off and running from me. And he was like, "Leave now or I'll have you arrested." And here's this old man running from me. All the people with me were like, "Holy cow." And I was like, "Well, how the heck are you going to do that? You're on the run. You're running from me. How are you going to have me placed in custody when you're running?" It was the exact opposite. I needed my security team there to slap the cuffs on him for his fraudulent behavior and fictitious grammar and his delusional conditions of state about his religion. Because when I met with the Vatican and the Secretary of State's office, they said we use religion to control the masses. It's just a game to them. And so the people buy into that. And that's very sad. Anyway, I got done with filing my SEE treaty, and I took my SEE treaty back over to the U.S. Supreme Court to file it. And I told them what I had done under a Camara treaty, being a camera, the spherical vault, camerot Earth as a spherical vault is what they're using it. It's called a camerot. And and basically the vault is the vessels in motion inside the vault. They don't let you out. That's why the doors at the Catholic Church are locked from the inside. And same with the U.S. Supreme Court. The keyholes are on the inside, like your normal house you come up to, and you always enter your house from the outside. Well, it's the reverse. At the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., and at the Vatican in Rome, they're one and the same. So they lock the door on the inside so nobody can get out. So this is fraud. This is fiction. And so I filed my Camara Treaty to navigate myself to open the doors with a Latin term called claves cleaves, which is dealing with custom house brokers to open and use the keys to open and close doors. So when I did that under a Camara Treaty, what did the fiction world come out with? Their Camaras, otherwise known as their cameras. And they sat me down with Capitol Hill Police and U.S. Secret Service, and they wanted my picture for their Camara, for their camera, because I was identifying what the slave hold on planet Earth. And they were very cognizant. They were very, and when I did that, all 9 judges came out to see me. William Rehnquist, Clarence Thomas, all of them came down to take a look at me. I just looked at them and said, "You can't even read and write, and you're looking at the man." And they just put their heads down and walked off. Don't have much honor for those guys because of the fiction that they're using and the babble that they're spewing out of the U.S. Supreme Court to enslave the citizens of this country. So I don't give them much honor. Anyway, so I ordered the courts open, and I ran it on a timeline because everything functions again in the shipping world under these timelines. It's how they keep everybody in bondage. And I knew what the timelines were, and I showed up at a specific time, a specific date. When I showed up, this was on the first Monday of October of 2004, the fiscal new year of the government. They had the doors closed at 0900. So I ran off the steps, and the Secret Service and Capitol Hill Police and U.S. Supreme Court Police all ran out and stood one stair up from me, and they put their cameras and their microphones on me. And I called my corporation case number out, and I called all 9 judges to court under the 3-strike rule, called all 9 judges 3 times, all Vassalese 3 times. As soon as I called, said the statement for the fees been paid for the bills of the lading for the custom house brokers to join me as my tip staffs, all 64 Secret Service agents and Capitol Hill Police and U.S. Supreme Court Police jumped on my plane and said, Judge Gould, we're here. Now, a very unique thing happened during this time frame. As I was calling the charges and as I was going through and conducting my trial, a class of children tried to get into the U.S. Supreme Court building, but it was locked and they couldn't get in. This was about 9/10. And they couldn't get in the building, and they come walking by, and they kind of moved around us. I was looking at the teacher, and they kind of moved around us, and because they saw this entourage of all these security agents, and it looked probably pretty intimidating to them. Not very intimidating to someone who knows, but intimidating to them. And they couldn't get in the building. And the reason why they couldn't get in the building because I had paid the fee for the freight for that building. That was my vessel. And the public, under their birth certificates, were not allowed in that vessel. They were rejected, even though it was normal operations of business hours for the fiction. It was the end of the fiction for the U.S. judicial system. So, anyways, that lady in the class kind of moved around us, and when I called for the custom house brokers, they all jumped on my plane. They said, Judge Gould, we're here. They said, would you like to go in the building? And I looked up, and the doors of the Supreme Court were opening. And as they opened, they said, Judge Gould, would you like to come in the building and hold trial? Meet the judges. I said, I no longer need the judges, for there are no longer any judges in the building. I've just disqualified all 9 judges under the 3-strike rule, under tardy. What that means is, when you're in the public school system, you're run in there as a piece of chattel, as a cargo, to go to our public school systems. If you're late more than 10 minutes, they consider you absent. You're not allowed to go into the class. Same thing held true here. I conducted trial. I called them all 9 of them to court 3 times. And none of them showed. Which means they were absent. They did not show. And under knowledge of the law, under Title 42, 1986, for the stopping and correcting of a wrong, I stopped and corrected because the United States Supreme Court judges were all disqualified. I was then and am the head judge for the U.S. Supreme Court for that foreign vessel and dry dock, for that building in Washington, D.C. I am the chief judge. All 9 judges knew it. All 9 judges retired. Congress made 5 stay. I put a gag order through a Pignus-judgment and a pocket-judgment with a vessel name called Chump-Change against William-Hubbs:"Rehnquist, articulating the fact that he was no longer to babble his fiction to the public. Because the fiction controls the media then announced that he had throat cancer, and he was dead within 90 days. So he never spewed his fiction back out into our world. And that's the story of the takedown of the U.S. Supreme Court. In the summary judgment of the takedown, I filed in as Paymaster-General for the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard at the Pentagon because the civil sector was closed in the United States. Again, I closed it. And I am, to this day, the only citizen in the history of planet Earth to disqualify a country's acting and sitting Supreme Court in any country in the history of mankind. I am the only person to ever do that. And that's because I knew the secrets of shipping. I knew where I was at in time and space. And I knew how to make it manifest in a timely manner. And so it's really, really, really humbling to do. But I am the first and only that I know of person to disqualify a country's acting and sitting Supreme Court in the history of mankind. In the summary judgment, I filed in as Paymaster General at the Pentagon. And I took the summary judgments and I mailed them over to the different branches at the U.S. Pentagon, as well as the different banking locations around the world. And did that in a timely function too, within a 10-day correspondence back. Now, a very funny thing happened. When John Cornwall and the U.S. Capitol Police and the U.S. Secret Service and U.S. Supreme Court Police jumped on my plane, and they asked me to come in the building, I told them no, because I'm Chief Judge. Their jaws dropped. And they says, well, how can we help you? I says, well, you can autograph my stamps here. So they autographed the stamps. I says, but I got to go around to the back, to the clerk's office, because I don't need to go in there anymore, because it's closed. They said, okay. So they all marched with me, and the person that was with me, they marched around to the back. And when we got to the back, how do you know when the U.S. judicial system's lying to you? Their lips are moving and their hands are moving. They're writing something. So they tried to file stamp my contract in with those guys in Joinder for September 31st, 2004. There's no such thing as a date, September 31st. You got to watch the U.S. judicial system at all turns, because they're lying to you. Every time the court system does something, it's a lie. So they tried to log in their very disqualification. They tried to catch me in filing a document that disqualified them on September 31st, 2004. There's no such date as September 31st, 2034, because in the Gregorian calendar, there's only 30 days in the month of September. So I had to catch them at that, stop and correct them there, all the way up to the end, get it dated October 1st, 2004, and then move forward. And so you really got to watch the U.S. judicial system, because how do you know when they're lying to you? Their lips are moving. Their hands are writing. They're doing something. The whole thing's a scam. The whole thing's a lie. Don't worry. I fixed it. I booted it up and I fixed it for the correctness for a federal serve system. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But that is my witnessing of what I did at the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was everything I thought it would be. One of the greatest and coolest things I've ever done. Shame on those judges for carrying on the way they're doing against the people right now, but it doesn't have to be. Citizens of our country need to contact me if they're involved in cases there, because they're being lied to. And they're not operating correctly now, and they need to be. And I am the walking proof of it. Come to the Supreme Court with me. Find out who's the boss. I'm not very nice when I get there to any of them, because I am the boss. So it's pretty fun. Anyway, part of the filings on the summary judgment, of course, went to the Pentagon. Once the civil sector in the U.S. judicial system was done, I then proceeded into contractual timelines under a clerk's pratique, under 3-day rescission, 60-day correspondence, as a postmaster clerk under the mechanical functions of a postmaster with the Pentagon. On December 12th, 2004, I walked into the Pentagon to look for my office, for my place of where I was going to conduct operations out of to safeguard the soldiers as a muster master. Secretary of Navy's office had leased the flag from me. Position as a muster Ivan master to stop all lawsuits against the soldiers, and a position as a paymaster general to make sure that the soldiers, number one, would start getting paid in correct communication parties in quantum banking, which I had filed my contracts with years and years before with the Pentagon. And when I walked into the Pentagon and asked for the flag duty officer, because I know the etiquette of boarding a vessel. I'm Postmaster General Sovereign. I'm the only one with the legal and lawful authorization to be on that land. What that means is that Pentagon is docked as a vessel on the planet. The planet is under survey. the survey went to the postilium of Benjamin Franklin, and I disqualified Benjamin Franklin's capacity to create a survey for the land. So the land is held in trust by me. And how that happened was in several criterias. Number one, I'm the only person to articulate elements and matter in a tetrahedron. What that means is at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, which is the location that I had disqualified in 2004 for fraudulent grammar, all countries register the style of how they're going to communicate. One of the styles that they register is their periodic tables. But because of the laws of boxing, anything in a box is not within the box. So when you look at a periodic table, you see the fine line around each element. It vacates it under style. So the element is not actually there. So when I published the disqualification of all periodic tables on the planet, within 72 hours, the CIA, the NSA, and the Department of Defense pulled me off the street to have a conversation about what the heck I had just done. Because of the fabric of communication and all molecular matter on the planet, I had just disqualified its origin to communicate. So I put it in a tetrahedron on trilateral angles and put my matters in triangles so I could triangulate and move my elements and my matters from point A to point B through time and space. Or I should say through now space. Time is just no longer. So as I did that, the government really wanted to talk to me about it. So they approached me in Monterey, California. And as I was approached by them, they pulled out their badges. Of course, I went Department of Defense. Department's a pronoun, of is an adverb, make a defense a verb. No such thing. Guy looked at the other guy. He goes, well, I'm United States Central Intelligence Agency. Of course, adjective pronoun, I corrected his grammar. I says, please, if you're running around the planet telling everybody you're intelligent and work for the intelligence agency, intelligence you're using as an adjective here, agency is a pronoun. But in as a prefix to a word, and all words means no. So you're actually running around the world telling everybody you're not intelligent. Don't do that. Somebody's going to slap you around for stupidity. He looked at the guy from the Department of Defense, who his credentials were disqualified. So then the guy from the NSA pulled out his credentials. I said, adjective, adjective, pronoun. No facts either. All three guys looked at each other and says, yes, you're him. We'd like to talk to you about this periodic table here. There's a real national security concern here. So we sat down with the boys and had a conversation about the pecking order of communication, the style of how things are supposed to be correct as they navigate themselves through now space. Now, I did a very unique thing in my periodic table. I took out all matter that could be manipulated through bombarding it with electrons. I took out that matter and made it a positive matter. So matter that like Einsteinium, Berkeleum, where things could be manipulated and they'd see just for a fraction of a second, those things were all taken out of my periodic table. My periodic table was also lined up into into atomic mass and atomic structure. And so it took me 5 months to do the periodic table. I did it with a gentleman who helped me conduct my military duty posts, and we'll get into him a little later. His name is Stephen-Alvin: Roebuck. A genius, a very brilliant man. He was a dentist at one point in his life, but moved over into the quantum world. He helped me structure the periodic table, and I would like to give him some credit with that because he definitely is a part of that. So thank you, Steve. But back to meeting with the government. The government basically said that they had been studying my protocols and they wanted to talk to me about the court-martialing of Bush and Cheney. They said Bush and Cheney were really upset with me. And I told them I don't care. They're misrepresenting. They're not the president. They're not the vice president. That's a scam. I says, and this 9/11 thing that you guys are pulling off is a scam. They said, very good, it is. They also told me that that I run the world in banking because of the periodic table and how I can make matter positive. They were very impressed. They said, good luck keeping it because everybody's going to want to steal it from you. Because all banking comes from matter. And I disqualified all matter on the planet because of the laws of boxing through their education of what they gave everyone. It was false and misleading. And so they wanted to, they also wanted to talk about some classified things that I'm not going to get into. But when it was all said and done, they were satisfied with what I had to tell them. And we moved on from that conversation. But let me get back to the walking into the Pentagon. So on December 12th, 2004, when I went back to the Pentagon to find my business location, my office, so I can start conducting operations to safeguard the American soldiers, I was met went into the employee side on the front of the building. And when I went in, I was met with the security team, SWAT teams. And because I knew the protocols of flag duty officers, I asked for their flag duty officer to come front and center, for the Pentagon had a lease with me for the flag. They blocked that. They would not let the flag duty officer come front and center, which means they broke their own protocol, because as a foreigner, when you walk up to a post, the first thing that you got to find out is what flag are they coming under? Whose flag are you coming under to function as a post? Right? Because then you know who's behind the wall, so to speak, who's behind the fort, who's behind the base. So I asked for the flag duty officer, and they failed to give me one. So they said, well, I said I'd like to come in and find my office. And they said, well, do you know anybody in here? So I called Commander Kaufman, because I haven't spoken with him for years. So I called him up. He says, hey, I said, hey, I got a peace treaty here with the Pentagon, filed on February 20th, 2003. I said, I'd like to come in with the peace and start helping here. And his exact words to me were, Postmaster General Russell-J. Gould, he says, what happens when peace gets breached? I says, well, then it's war. He goes, that's right. He goes, now what are you going to do? Because peace is being breached. I looked at the Pentagon, because I'm always in a position of neutral. I'm not trying to be aggressive towards people. I looked at the Pentagon, I go, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I got to go to war with the very thing that I saved? That's what's going on in my brain. I was like, I just saved all these people. I got to go to war with them? That defeats the purpose of who I am. And I was like, well, the apparatus up above them, I says, these people got to be ignorant. And so the deep state and the people that were controlling the Pentagon, in fact, Donald Rumsfeld and Richard Myers, or Peter Pace, Richard Myers, Dick Myers, came down to a level up above there, and they were real cocky, all waving at me. Little Rumsfeld, see his little beady eyes. Yeah. Anyway, he's waving, and they're laughing. And I could hear them talking to the guards. Let's see if he can get past the guards. I'm looking at these guys, and they all got guns. I'm there not in the fighting mood, right? I'm there to just peaceably navigate myself through there. I'm not prepared to get into a war at that point. I have uneducated people around me for that. That's a different. When I go to war, it's different. Yeah, and due to the lack of education to the guys that were at the front gate, the doorkeepers, it was counterproductive to go to war with them at that point, because they didn't know what to do. They were following fraudulent orders, and I knew it. So I backed out. I was escorted off by a SWAT team off the property, and at that point on that day, I made a publication into the Pentagon for martial law, and I started conducting a military court-martialing trial that lasted 3 years, every 45 days in the Washington Mall, next to the Washington Obelisk there. And for every 45 days, for 3 years, I showed up. I put in literally 10,000 mailings to every base, fort, everybody that was in the military at that time on the upper end, mainly from full board colonels, lieutenants on up. Didn't really get into the NCOs and the master sergeants, and I didn't go to that level. I alerted all bases and forts on in the U.S. I held a military duty post for 30 days, where we had, through the law of the flag, had a muster roll and a log book for who would come off the base. When I would conduct my military court-martialing trials at the Washington Mall, they would put up 20 to 50 cameras behind me, and they would put up cameras in Apache and Chinook helicopters above me and come down like this. They had little dishes with microphones coming out, and they set up in vans all around me. And I conducted trial there for 3 years. During the trial, I covered and learned many things, things I would not want to get into for the public purview. A lot of that was hard learned and classified. I learned a lot. But during that ended because they got mad at me for doing it. And they trumped up no charges up in Wisconsin, up in Michigan, and they dragged me up in 2006 up to the state of Michigan. When I first got into the courtrooms during the condition of state of martial law, they brought in the U.S. Marines and they started punching me in the face in the federal courtroom in Casper, Wyoming, on the extradition on over there to Michigan. They beat me up. It hurt. Then when I got out of the courtroom, they knocked me out. That hurt. Then that night, they took me to San Bernardino, California, and they beat me up again. And that hurt too, because they were using these asps, these like metal batons. They'd lump me all up on my arms and on my head, and I was beat up pretty good. It hurt. Then they moved me 10 days later over to Oklahoma City. And I didn't get beat up there. But I met with Pentagon, strangely enough. A rear admiral showed up. He had a conversation with me that they were going to be waiting for my commands at the Pentagon, and that they were dropping me into my first war, which I found quite fascinating because, number one, they didn't have authorization to move me, and that they were going to take me to a war, and I didn't comprehend. I'm like, I'm Chief Judge of the United States. How the heck can they be taking me to war? But they took me up to Michigan, and in the federal courts in the state of Michigan flew the state flag in joint tenets with the federal flag. And why that is Michigan was one of the 5 territories when Abraham Lincoln went to renew the bankruptcy to fight the South. He had to go pick up 5 states because he had 13 stars on his Union Jack. And when he went to borrow the money, they told him no. So he had to pick up 5 states. He picked up Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So I knew the trick. I knew what was going on. Since I owned the flag, the feds couldn't kick the state out of the federal courthouse because they were giving back their sovereignty. So the federal prosecutors were running 2 sets of books. They were running as state prosecutors and federal prosecutors simultaneously. The state was running 2-day turnarounds. The feds were running 3-day turnarounds under rescission timeline. So there was 2 sets of books running. So it was very tricky to navigate through, but I did. And I won the case. But when I got there, the federal prosecutors tied me up into a chair, and they started dancing around me, saying they use adverbs, verbs, adjectives, and pronouns. They know that I use prepositional phrases to certify my facts. And they were going to hold me for 25 years if I didn't comply and use an adverb, adjective, or pronoun. Use a no fact. They says, we only use no facts here. Guy was spitting in my face, dancing all around. He was a real jerk. His name was Donald Davis. I got a long memory, and he deserves what he's got coming to him. Anyway, he's dancing around and yelling and spitting in my face and thinking he's real tough. I just kind of looked at him. And the U.S. Marshals came in kindly, and they pushed the federal prosecutor off of the guy. and off of me. They pushed that federal person, Donald Davis, off. They says, don't you get it? He says, this guy ain't afraid of you. Heck, he ain't even afraid of us or any of our friends. Guy just ain't afraid. Back off him. They unchained me off that chair and they took me out in the hallway. And they walked me back into the booking room. I thought they were going to try to book me again. So I come in there and I stuck my hands up. And they're like, no one's going to we're not going to kick your ass this time. We're done kicking your ass. We kick your ass all the time when you don't do nothing. You just look at us. I just looked at them. And every time they beat me up, I couldn't get mad at them. I was frustrated, but I couldn't get mad. Kept my cool. Always keep your cool when you're in a fight. Don't ever let anyone tell you who to hate. And don't ever let anyone tell you who to fight. You look at the circumstances, you evaluate the social engineering, and you think through it for yourself. Anyone out there that's watching this, don't ever let anyone tell you who to hate. Anyway, I didn't hate those people. Even though they beat me up a lot, I didn't hate them. I knew they were bound to a system and parameters. And I knew that the bad people were hiding behind them. And I knew that. So I couldn't get angry with them. But it hurt. Hurts getting beat up a lot, especially when they knock you out and they welt you all up when they're hitting you with their batons. That hurts. Anyway, U.S. Marshals, they took me into that back room. I think I'm going to get another ass kicking, so I'm kind of getting ready for the ass kicking. And they said, no. This guy's like, no, we're not going to hurt you. Hey, we watched the videos of you at the U.S. Supreme Court. We believe every word you're saying. You are Chief Judge. Can't believe you're here. They said, hey, man, what's going on with the Bush and Cheney court-martialing? We want to know. And I explained it to them, as I've explained to you, that since the United States government ceased to exist, and they said, hey, we believe you. He says, but these people here are bad. They don't like you. They don't like what you're doing and the attention that you're bringing to the situation. I says, well, they got all the public cameras. They got all the public media. They haven't told the citizens the truth. There is no United States government. There is no president. This is all a scam. They're like, yeah, we know. Can't do nothing about it. Our hands are tied, but we're going to be nice to you here. We're not going to beat you up. We believe you. It says, however, you have a corporate partner. And it says, David Winkle and Miller. In his performances of claiming to be there with you, he's never there. He's not in the videos. So we don't believe him. We believe you, but we don't believe him. And they asked me, they says, was David with you at the Supreme Court and at the Pentagon? I said, no, he was not. That is correct, because we've watched the cameras. You're not going to trick our cameras. That is you standing there, and that is only you standing there. I says, correct. They says, but we want to show you what Dave's really about. I says, well, I hope he's about correctness, because that's what I'm about. They said, yes, we know. And so then they wanted to talk to me about what happened at the Vatican. And I explained to them my position at the Vatican as a keymaster and as a commander-in-chief and comptroller of the global currency and the things that I went under contract with over there. And they said, yes, we believe you. We saw the videos. You are over there. You did do that. You are this person. Strange as that may sound, they said, man, they said, you met some really interesting people. I said, yeah, I went behind some pretty neat doors, for sure. They says, we believe you. They says, now, what's going on with this periodic table? So I explained to them about elements and matter and laws of boxing and why we put judges in judges' boxes and juries in jury boxes, so we the people don't have to consider anything that they ever say because of the laws of four cornering. And they said, yes, we know about the boxes. Anything in a box is not there. I says, yes, judges in judges' boxes and juries in jury boxes, so we the people don't have to consider anything they say. They're like, very good, you know the secrets. I says, yes, I do know the secrets. I said, the same thing holds true with the periodic tables. As we were educated as children and young men and women, we learned that about the elements in our science classes. The only problem was the elements were all in a box. Anything in a box isn't there, so they taught us nothing and gave us nothing, so when we come to the land of contract, we would have nothing. And they said, the land of contract, I says, the only place it counts on the planet, in the middle of these neutral ports worldwide.
I'm a sovereign I'm the only sovereign in the United States. I have my own country. My own country, and guess what the land of my country is? The land of the courtroom during the time of contract. No one has ever claimed the land of the courtroom during the time of contract. So every courtroom I go into on planet Earth is my country on planet Earth because I was appointed to me through the United Nations, where all 200 countries treated with me, saying when you come into a courtroom, you are the senior chief judge under land of the contract, and because your contracts are written in quantum grammars, which creates the constitution of the land of the contract. The courtroom. And the courtroom is not a geographical location, it's paper, folks. The land of paper is the contract. Because the contract of the paper is not bonded to the room is just a point of convenience. So, what is a courtroom? A courtroom is a piece of paper.
I says, the ports are bound to the Universal Postal Union. And I am the controlling Postmaster General of the Global Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland with my construct. They said, yes, you are. Now, a really neat thing happened. When I was in trial in Michigan, the clerk of court for the federal courts had all my treaties and contracts that were on file in the at the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland. She had those stacks in her clerk's booth. So all my contracts that were on file with the Universal Postal Union, she had in her booth to give her amnesty from prosecution. Because they couldn't, it was a ruse. They couldn't really do anything to me because she couldn't put her mark and process anything forward. Because she was under joinder with the postal system through the Department of Transportation. And I was the only one with fee for freight to be there because they were on my land. However, they were flying the Michigan flag in the state courts. So I ran the timelines and pulled some judge moves on them and was able to win the trial. After I won the trial, they brought in the U.S. military to talk to me. And for days I spoke with the U.S. military in my booking cell because they couldn't book me. And in that trial I did, in my stay there at Newaygo County, I did have to go through without some food for a while. They used food as a weapon, trying to break me it wasn't too bad. It was like 45 days without food. So it wasn't too terribly bad. So I went to like from 170 pounds at that trial to probably like 120, 122 pounds. So it wasn't so severe, but it was enough to, when you go without food for 45 days, it's a real eye opener. That's for sure. Because they were using the food as a weapon to try to book me if I would eat the food. Then they would take me down to booking and try to get my fingerprints, and I wasn't going to check into their hotel, glorified hotel, and their jailers are just function as babysitters. I don't need any glorified babysitters. So anyway, I won that trial, but the Department of Affairs for the state of Michigan came in and handed me the state flags. They surrendered their flags to me in booking, which was interesting. And the U.S. military came to talk to me about a lot of things. I can't really get into those conversations, but they asked me for a lot of support in specific areas. Some things I could support them in, some things I couldn't. One of the things I can't support them in is the dinar. The dinar is based upon a war that was a lie. I don't participate with the Bush lies. Those people that's a scam. That's fake. That's fraud. Deep state fraud. The Bush family is nothing more than a fake family which preys upon the ignorance of those that they employ around them. And they promise them things that they can't because the Bushes don't have any authorization to do anything. That's all fake. And so, and they know it. Anyway, that's about all I got to say about the court-martialing at this point.